Hey folks, everything new under the sun. So I've been looking for how to disassemble a Zojirushi BBCC X20. I think I got the name of it right. The Breadmachine. What you're looking at right now is the underneath of it, and this is the belt. This is kind of often the thing you have to replace on a Breadmachine. I could not find for the life of me any videos that really went through how to disassemble it. Now, in my case, I was fixing a squeaking that came, and it wasn't the bread pan. There's videos out there for fixing squeaky bread pans. In this case, it was the actual drive splines that connect with the bread pan to turn it, and they were squeaking significantly. So every time it would make dough, it would just squeak, squeak, squeak incessantly. So I tried to tear it down. Now, warning, this is a pretty significant tear down. You got to go through a lot of stuff. You got to tear this thing apart. This thing was not made to come apart, and it's interesting. But I wanted to make a video, but I didn't have a video camera at the time. But I want to go through and at least for the next person. So this may be long-winded. I'm going to go through every step of the way, but you can fast forward if you want and stop on different frames. So like I say, this is a Zojirushi BBCC X20 machine. It's got the 2 paddles in it. I don't think I actually have an image of the unit overall, and I should have. Regardless, this is a bread machine. It is a Zojirushi 2-paddle horizontal bread machine. Here is a look at the side of it. So this may look like yours, and if it does, great. So quickly, what I want to do, and hopefully this will cooperate for me in terms of the speed of these images loading. I want to go back here and just show you where the screws are. So like I say, it's a whole teardown. It's a lot of work. I did not find any bearings in the unit, in the posts that drive the bread machine paddles. So here I'm just pointing at the screws. So basically you have to take out all the screws that you see. Let me see if I can go through this. It's got to load from my network attached storage. It's a little slow. I'm just going through here, pointing at them all. There's a lot of screws. You got to take them all out. Originally, I was going to do a time lapse or something of that. Anyways, so take out all the screws you can see. Unfortunately, you cannot flip this over and just take off the bottom plastic piece because it's screwed from the inside. So you can't just take out the bottom plastic piece to get at the belts. That would be nice and simple, you'd think. But Zojirushi did not design it that way. So the next thing is, once you got the 2 screws on the side off, you can crack open the digital display. And this opens up. You can see the motor in there and the bundle of wires. Now, for the bundle of wires, you'll note that there is a tie strap in the back top right corner-ish. Or, well, kind of center, I guess. You got to take those off. You got to take also the 4 screws underneath this cap off, which I'm pointing to now. And then you got to take off all the screws from the inside, pretty much, except for the centerpiece. The centerpiece where the actual blades are that turn the paddles. You don't need to take the screws off from that metal piece, just all the pieces around the outside. Now, note the screw that's below the one that I'm turning right now. It is attached to some thermal sensors, some thermometers attached to the side. We're going to take a look at that later, but that's a key piece that you got to put back in place when you put this back together. From there, once all the screws are done from the inside, I didn't show the screws at the very bottom underneath, around the outside beside the element in the bottom there. There's about 6 or 8 screws down there you got to take out. Once you've taken all those out, then you can start sliding it upwards, just like I show here, and then it pops out. So now you can finally, well, you can't see much yet, but you can see the screws at least for the whole bottom plate. The back yellow wires, those are the thermometers, thermal sensors, whatever, thermistors, I think they're called, thermistor, that senses the temperature of the thing. So you got to be careful. It's a little bit tricky putting this back together because you got to attach that yellow wire first outside of the bread machine to the outside metal, and then slide the outside metal back into place. So it's a little bit tricky there. The other thing that you got to do is on this lid here, there's a black wire that goes to power. You can't see it, but it's kind of behind the yellow wire. How can I describe this? right in the center, kind of where the bundle's going through the plastic clip, there's a black plastic clip in behind where you can disconnect, and that's the main 120 volt power. So you can disconnect that to give you more length. So let's go ahead back to where we were here. This is a lot of work. They did not make this thing to come apart. So once you got all the screws off the top plastic piece, then you can pop it off. You can see there, you can see all the clips where it clips around to the outside. Again, if you could take this off from the bottom, it'd be super easy, but you can't. You do need to take the tie strap off the plastic clip where the bundle wires go. Otherwise, it doesn't flow through there easily enough to give you actual access. In this case, I didn't take the lid off at all. I found you didn't actually need to. It just kind of slides off. You'll see it. Just a little bit of gentle prying and pulling will remove it off the top. So now you have access to the whole motor and bottom assembly. You don't have to remove the element or anything like that. So now we get at the screws. Here's a look at the clip and the black plastic 120 volt line that I was talking about. You just unclip that, and that gives you a little bit more leeway to stretch the wires over the back so you can get at it. Now you start taking off the screws that take out the bottom, the motor, the whole motor assembly basically, and the belts, and that this disconnects it from the case basically. So I'm pointing at all the screws here. Here, that's by the motor, bottom right corner there. And one up on the other side of the motor, one in between the heating elements. This is the top right-hand corner of it. You can just pause the video if I'm going too fast and you look at a particular image. So here it is kind of taken out, just all sorts of breadcrumbs and burnt this and that. But this is where you want to get to. Now underneath, now we can start seeing the belt. And this is, of course, what you'd want to do if you had to replace the belts. In my case, the belts look perfect. There's nothing wrong with them at all. Here's a look at the gears. And there's bolts on the bottom. These bolts we're going to have to take off. But first, of course, first you have to take off the belts. So you take out the belts gently. You don't want to wreck them, of course. Here's a look at the inside, all the stuff that had dropped through to the bottom plate of it that you can never get at. Again, if they gave you access underneath from this bottom plastic piece, it would be great. But you can see that the bottom plastic piece, the plate, is screwed on from the inside. So you have no way of doing any user maintenance or replacing the belt in any easy way other than completely tearing this thing apart. Here's a look at the big pulley. I took the belt off there, and we'll need to do the second belt, and then we'll take the pulleys off. I did have a big wrench. These bolts are on there hard, plus there's some Loctite on there. So it takes some muscle. You got to hold the pulley with one hand and twist it with the other. It takes some muscle to get these things off. They're well stuck on there. There's the first pulley off, and now we can see the spline, or what do you want to call it? The piece that was squeaking, the actual turning piece. I've lost all words, whatever you call it. And we're taking a look at it a little bit closer here because, like I say, this is the one that's squeaking. Here's a look at both of them. I lied. The last picture was the one that was not squeaking so bad, that side. Here it is again. The taller one is the big spindle, the big pulley. The smaller one is the small pulley. So if you look at this, the small pulley is a shorter one. You need to know that because when you take these out, you're going to have to put them in the right place. Otherwise, the pulleys won't go back on, and you'll quickly find out. You can see that the one on the right-hand side is a bit more gummed up, and that one was squeaking even more. Looks like some liquid got under there, and it kind of made a mess of things. So I went ahead and oiled this up. Now, at this point, you probably could oil it up, but I went ahead and took these right out of there. This is at the point where my camera battery died, and I could no longer take photos, unfortunately. But there are C-clips here. I've got a couple images of the C-clip. You can't see it really. There is a C-clip there. You get a flathead screwdriver. You pop that off. A couple of washers. And then you can slide this guy right out. There's a C-clip there on the top. And is that it? Yeah, that's it. That's all I had for photos. My battery died at this point. So what I did was I slid both posts out once I got the C-clips off, and it took some time because there's the brown grunge at the top there kind of made it thicker at the end, so I couldn't get it out. I ended up sanding it off a little bit just to get it through the hole, and then I wiped it down with paper towel, got all the old grease and grime off there, and then I oiled it up with some hair clipper oil. You should probably use some grease or some. I'm sure there's some high heat grease or oil you're supposed to use. I just used some my wall hair clipping oil. It's meant for metal to metal pieces. There's no bearings in this. This is looks like a brass outer jacket to a steel center post, and then they just rotate within each other. There's no bearings here at all. Metal on metal, so a little bit of oil in there. I did find out later that you can actually oil it up a bit easier from the inside probably and get away with a quicker cleaning. But in this case, I did the full 9 yards there. So I took them out and I sanded them both off just to get the grunge off there, the burnt stuff, and just to freshen up the metal. It's probably not ideal. It probably should be polished, but just to make it a little bit smaller around the outside of it, so it would be a little bit looser in there and not bind up, hopefully. That's my thought. I don't know if it'll help, but I'm sure in the life of this unit, it's probably not going to make a difference. Either way. So once I got it all sanded off, I put some oil on both of them, stuck them back in, put the clips back on. I cleaned the clips up, of course, and then I started assembling it. Now, the assembly is just exactly the same way in reverse. I did some vacuuming there to get rid of all the extra stuff, the crumbs that had fallen into the base plate. I put the pulleys back on, put the bolts back on, tighten them down. You probably should use Loctite. I didn't, but whatever. I'll either learn or not learn. If they fall off, then I'll probably just cut a hole in the very bottom plate of it. Right, what you see there, I'll probably just cut a hole there just so that I can directly access it, because it's a pain, because that's like all the screws are done on the inside. You put the pulleys back on, get it all together, and then you start buttoning it up. And I ended up with a couple of screws extra, but it's all good. You just follow the same thing that you did. Like I say, put all the screws back in wherever you see a screw missing. The big thing is the yellow wires. Again, like I was making mention of, those wires right there. Before you put the jacket back in, you screw those wires onto it, and you'll kind of see how they go on. But you screw those in first, and then you slide the jacket back into the hole, and then you can put it all back together. And then you're back to square one. So that is it. That's kind of how to disassemble, and also how I oiled up the shafts, the drive shafts there. In terms of maintenance, I mean, this is not user maintainable by any stretch. They did not make it easy. You have to tear this thing down piece for piece. Be careful with the metal. It's very sharp. I cut myself a couple of times because they don't expect anybody going in there. So the metal is just, just sharp. All the stuff straight out of the factory in there. Make sure you vacuum it good. Make sure there's nothing that has fallen into your motor, because that's the key piece, obviously. And that all your wires are connected. Connect up your 120 volt black connector again. And make sure that you get them in the clip again, because you don't want any hanging over the motor, overheating, and causing a short in there. Then once you got all your wires in there and your screws back in, go ahead and test it. Put on quick dough mode. And then you'll be able to get it running where the shafts start turning, and that'll give you an indication as to whether you fix the squeak or not in my case. And in my case, it did. How long will the oil last that I put in there? I have no idea. But I think what you can do is, here's a decent image. What you can do is set the unit on its side and drop oil down the side of the shafts, and then flip it back right way up again. That oil will go down into the shaft. So I think I'll probably do that next time. It's hard to explain what I mean, but I think instead of taking it apart next time, I'll maybe try that, now that I can see there's a bit of an access to the shaft and the jacket, the sleeve there of the shaft. So you put a little bit in there, and then you can spin them with your hand. It's pretty hard, but you spin them and just to get that oil worked in there, and that should hopefully keep you going for the next little while. So that is it for the Zojirushi BBCC X20 disassembly process. You could use this process to also replace your belts. But that's my experience, so feel free to ask any questions if you have any. I can certainly attempt to help with what I've gained. I haven't seen much out there at all related to actually repairing these, disassembling them, replacing belts, or getting rid of squeaks in the actual shafts. There are no user replaceable bearings. There's no bushings that I see, really. Just brass on stainless steel, it looks like. So a little bit of oil or maybe some high heat grease or something like that will help. So thanks for watching, guys. Hope I didn't miss anything, but I tried to remember everything that I did when I was doing it. Sorry I didn't have more pictures of kind of the finished product and the cleaned up product, but that should be enough to get you going. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys in the next video.